Thank you for tuning in once again to his Vine and Fig Tree podcast. My name is Kurt Olson. I'm your host. I'm coming to you on the afternoon of the day after Election Day, November 5th, 2025. And few things quickly from this week, um, and won't take a lot of your time. The first one is some post-election stuff, um, and this is so a, bl- a bloodbath, just a bunch of really bad things that unfolded for Republicans yesterday. No wins in Virginia, no wins in New Jersey. The Muslim communist um, wins the mayor's race in New York City. And I want to read something from. I've shared in the past that I'm on an email forum with a bunch of, some of them are very well connected in the liberty movement or the right of center um, movement in our country. And the person who I'm going to be reading something from is a journalist. It does a lot of good analysis and observation on a variety of things. And this is what he shared with our group by email when someone had started kind of a post election thread. New York City mayoral race is indeed an idiosyncratic example of Democrat voters electing Democrats. Let's not fool ourselves, though. In Virginia, Democrats swept offices currently held by Republicans, in some cases by large margins, and gained significant ground in the state legislature. In New Jersey, Democrats won a third straight term of the governorship for the first time since the 1960s. And showing the national mood, Jack Ciattarelli did significantly worse than in 2021. In Pennsylvania, Democrats swept the statewide judicial races, ensuring Democrat control of the state Supreme Court for another decade. Each of the three liberals won by more than 20 points. If Republicans can't compete in Pennsylvania, they have serious problems. As Jim Garrity notes, things went badly in special elections in Georgia and Mississippi, too. The 2022 midterms were not nearly as terrible for Democrats as the mood in 2021 looked. But if this continues, next year could be a bloodbath. And that gets me to just a few observations about what's going on. The economy is not as strong as Team Trump would like everyone to believe it is. I know here where I live in Western New York, and people could argue, well, Olson, that's a blue state, and that's not what's going on elsewhere. But the economy is not strong here. When I've heard about a Trump economic boom, I'm like going, not here, not here at all. And I'm going to share in the description of the podcast a story I came across about a week and a half ago. And it's from a guy who has written some books on the economy and has made some um, observations about the economy moving forward. And he wrote a column in Real Clear Politics, and his piece focuses on how there are warning signs in the economy and how the Federal Reserve needs to take action sooner rather than later. Um, so I will share that, and you can read that at your leisure. So the economy is not as strong, and that kind of gets me to point two here on this is tax cuts. So going back to 1981, Ronald Reagan is elected. Jack Kemp and Senator Roth, and I forget what his first name was. I believe he was from, was it Delaware? Was it Washington? I think he was. I think it was Delaware. So it was the Kemp Roth tax bill someone from the House, someone from the Senate. They combine on a tax bill, it becomes law. And yes, Reagan had to pass it through a Democrat controlled House. So there's that. But it wasn't until the late in the second year and into the third year when those tax cuts started gaining traction. It started bearing some fruit in the economy, and it's one of the things that led to Ronald Reagan's landslide against Walter Mondale in 1984. Now, here's the dynamic in this one. Okay, we've had Trump's tax cuts codified in for the American people. But some people are suggesting the tariffs are doing more harm in this economy than Team Trump would ever be willing to acknowledge. And I've been critical of tariffs, and I remain critical of tariffs. And I think we need a whole lot more information about the tariffs before we can say, oh, yeah, they were a benefit to the United States. And then lastly, a big thing is ground game or energized voters. The more energized your voters are, the more likely they are to show up on election day or vote early voting and do something in advance. And these are things that are dynamics for the Republicans right now. And you need energized voters. And you can't have voters who feel like your policies aren't working. And these are some of the things that are affecting this mood. And so, just at a time when the Democrats looked like they were self destructing, the Democratic brand is unpopular. There's been a number of polls this year about how the Democratic brand is unpopular. But they got voters out yesterday. And if Republicans can't find a way to offset that, there's going to be some real problems that we see that is seen moving forward. And that's going to bring me to my second issue here, the government shutdown. Now, the government shutdown, I am of the opinion we need government a whole lot less than what government thinks we need. But what's the challenges with food stamps now happening is a legitimate problem. And we have people that in some states are going without any benefits at all. Trump is injecting at least partial money that they can into the system at this point. And we can't take food out of the mouths of children. We can't take food out of the mouths of widows or widowers who are living on Medicaid and food stamps. We can't take food out of the mouths of people who wouldn't have it otherwise. And I'm going to share in the description to the podcast an interview that Brooke Rollins, the agriculture secretary, gave on Fox News. Now, the interview itself was nothing dramatic, a lot of kind of pats on the back. It was a favorable interview for Brooke Rollins. And she's a former boss and she can handle herself in any setting. But what she communicates there is important because on the first day after she was confirmed, February 13th, she states how she started asking for information from all of the 50 states. 29 states complied and 21 did not, and they're all blue states including New York, California, and a few others. And because the goal was to make sure illegal immigrants were not getting food stamp benefits that should be going to Americans who need it. And So she cites some information in this interview, and it's worth your time. And what's going to be interesting in the coming 24, 48 hours, now that we're past the election, do the Democrats say we've gotten all the leverage we need from this thing? It's time to open up the government. That will be interesting to see how quickly that plays out. The third issue I want to mention is Dick Cheney. Dick Cheney, the former defense secretary for George H.W. Bush during Operation Desert Storm, and the vice president to George W. Bush um, died the other day at the age of 84. Now, Dick Cheney, when I was young, still trying to become familiar with not just government, but the people in government, he was in the Congress. And he is someone that I was like, oh, this guy's a conservative. I need to follow him a little bit. And then you would eventually see him become defense secretary and then vice president. I got to say, as the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq just kind of continued with no apparent end in sight, I became less enamored with the classic Dick Cheney neocon warhawk. Um, maybe it's just me. I don't think I'm alone in that opinion. Um, there were aspects of those wars that were very justified, but when you fight a war for 20 years, you're going way too long. And I just question whether we really had a strategy for winning, and let's implement it and be done with it and move forward. So, certainly don't wish any ill will on Dick Cheney or his family. What's going to be even more interesting is do they have his casket in the Capitol Rotunda because he was a former vice president? That will be interesting. It'll be interesting who from the Trump administration attends that funeral. Um, those are things that are just kind of sitting there on that. Last issue I want to bring to your attention is Nigeria. Last weekend, I'm just kind of doing some of the things that I normally do, just kind of some skimming some social media and what are some issues that are popping up. Just thinking of columns and even content for the podcast. And I come across Donald Trump said some things on social media last weekend that was directed at Nigeria and the persecution of Christians there, and how Nigeria better get their act together and start protecting them, or they face consequences from the American government. And I'm like, so let me explain my two initial reactions. My first reaction was, well, it is about time somebody did something. Okay? The genocide in Nigeria, I've been aware of since the mid teens, and it's something that I have been following regularly for some time now. And but the my other quick response right after that was, well, what about the Christians in the Democratic Republic of the Congo? What about the Christians in Mozambique? What about the Christians in Sudan? What about the Christians in Somalia? What about the Christians in a variety of other places of sub Saharan Africa that is the most dangerous location on the planet right now to be a follower of Jesus Christ. And um, I'm going to share also in the description to the podcast a short video clip from a pastor in Dallas, Texas, by the name of Josh Howerton. Now, Josh Howerton is the pastor at Lake Point Church. Okay, um, it's a multi-site mega church, and I'm not a fan of mega churches, but Josh Howerton kind of strikes me as a straight shooter with his congregation. No easy believism garbage. No sugarcoating things to make it a little softer for people. And he recently made some comments from the pulpit at his church, just mentioning one of his big regrets as a pastor, as he has seen video clips out of Nigeria and people there dealing day after day after day with people dying at the hands of Islamists. And he's like, have I not prepared you enough to deal with persecution? And he's raising some really big issues because do American Christians have the stuff that we see out of Christians in Africa? These people will have their villages attacked by some band of Islamists. In Nigeria, it's Boko Haram, it's an ISIS affiliate, it's Fulani herdsmen. And there's a lot of people that are lying to the public, suggesting, well, there's multiple political dynamics going on here, and it's not always just that cut and dry. Well, it is, and we know that because the 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 persecution is directed at people of faith. And when I say people of faith, I mean not just people who might be more Protestant in their thinking theologically there, but even Catholics. Um, so people of faith being the targets. And we also know this because 19,000 churches have been burned. And when we see persecution and we see this kind of activity, you know how Nigerian Christians respond? They show up at that burnt shell of a church and gather to worship Christ. Would American Christians be able to do the same thing? Would American Christians be able to face the same kind of stuff that those people deal with and come out with not just resilience, but a deeper faith that God's in control? So it remains to be seen how Trump is going to handle Nigeria. But are we then going to be going into China, North Korea, Afghanistan, Iran, Iraq, Syria, variety of other places, India? The the display of faith by brothers and sisters in Christ in Africa, quite frankly, is an inspiration. And if you haven't taken the time to read some of the stuff that's been happening there, or seen some of the videos of how they respond in Nigeria or other places, um, take the time and do that, because the response from those people is an absolute inspiration. And that's all I have this week for this podcast. I have a column dropping on Sunday. I'm not going to say much of a teaser, except for it deals with the Tucker Carlson Nick Fuentes interview that happened just recently, and how this is becoming a cancer on the right. That's all I'm going to say. I'm going to let my column do the speaking there. Um, and we're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, and until next time, God bless and goodbye.